Basic Brewing Radio is sponsored in part by the American Homebrewers Association. Now through August 31st, boost your brewing IQ with a free book when you join or renew your American Homebrewers Association membership. Choose from 3 books by the best brewing educators. Ray Daniels' Designing Great Beers, the ultimate guide to brewing classic beer styles. Stan Hieronymus's Brewing Local, American-grown beer. Or For the Love of Hops, practical guide to aroma, bitterness, and the culture of hops. Visit homebrewersassociation.org/basicbrewing to redeem this limited time offer. homebrewersassociation.org/basicbrewing. Welcome to Basic Brewing Radio for Thursday, August 18th, 2022. I'm James Spencer. Here at Basic Brewing Radio, we're all about home brewing. This week, we're chatting about mead in celebration of Mead Day. The Friday before Mead Day, Steve Wilkes and I were invited to do a live video stream with Ricky the Meadmaker on Groennfell's YouTube and Facebook pages. We talked for a good long time, and you get to hear some of the highlights this week right here. If you go to basicbrewing.com, you can find archives of our audio and video shows, and if you go to basicbrewingshop.com, you can find our DVDs and our brewer's logbooks. You can follow me on Twitter and Instagram at Basic Brewing and find our show page on Facebook as well. If you want to support us financially, check out patreon.com/basicbrewing, and many thanks to everybody who's helping out in that way. If you go to patreon.com/basicbrewing, you can see a long list of stuff that you can access if you sign up as a supporter. Steve Wilkes and I are planning to get together later this week to shoot at least 3 video episodes. Sounds ambitious. Steve has a pale ale and a mead. I have a couple of meads and perhaps a cream ale made with some cool fermented kveik. Can we shoot 4 videos in one day? Is that a sane thing to do? Is it wise? I don't know. Financial supporters will get early releases of those videos, recipes, and upper-tier supporters will get behind-the-scenes videos of the brews that I did. Lots of tasty stuff on the way. So, again, many thanks to everybody who's supporting us financially. In this week's episode, I mentioned that I was waiting on a shipment of mead from our friends and sponsors, Ricky and Kelly from Groennfell.com. Well, the UPS guy finally showed up, and boy, was I happy. I finally got to taste the cranberry lime and cranberry apple spritzers. They're as fresh and delicious as they sound and as promised. At only 4.2% ABV, they're very crushable in the summer heat. Well, Ricky has some more news for lovers of high-gravity meads. Bourbon barrel-aged veneer is available, but Ricky says you better hurry if you want some because it's almost spoken for. Veneer is a delicious traditional mead, usually aged on ashwood and oak staves, but now Groennfell has taken it a step further, and it's being aged in Village Garage Distillery bourbon barrels. I've been reading the tasting notes, and it sounds incredible. And if you include the bourbon barrel-aged veneer in the Mead Bottle Case Builder, you can get 15% off of it, and you get free shipping for all orders over $75. Check out the spritzers, bourbon barrel-aged veneer, and all the honey-based deliciousness at family-owned and operated Groennfell.com. That's Groennfell. Okay, Steve and I had a blast talking to Ricky. This is just a sampling of the first hour that we streamed live. There's another 45 minutes or so on the live stream, and you can see that archived on the Groennfell YouTube and Facebook channels. So we took viewer questions that we will answer in these snippets that you'll hear. But first, I dove a little bit into the history of how Steve and Ricky and I first got acquainted. We first met in person in the back of the Home Brewery in Fayetteville, Arkansas.
Yep.
This is a quiz for you. Do you remember what year or how many years ago it was, Steve?
I do not, but I'm going to take just a wild guess. It's a very wild guess. And I'm going to say 2009.
Oh, my.
Nailed it.
Did I really?
Yes, you did.
13 years ago this month.
Get out of town.
We gathered in the back of the store, and the topic of the show was unusual ingredients or found ingredients.
I remember the show.
And among the things, Ricky brought a Gruit-inspired beer, which had hops in it, which... so I say Gruit-inspired.
And old hops that I had found at the homebrew shop, and they wouldn't even sell to me.
Oh, well.
They just gave them to me.
I would have sold them.
And anything for $1, Steve.
Yeah.
And then there was also a Metheglin Braggot, which was big, and I went back and listened to the show. I liked it a lot. You and Andy were kind of iffy on it, but I think that, and you'll have to give us an update after a year or two. I bet it was way good. And
it was only like 3 months old at the time.
And you had sent us a Dandelion Kolsch and another beer that we tasted on the video.
The Dandelion Kolsch is what I remember of all of them.
And then in 2016, we met again in person at HomebrewCon in Baltimore, and that's when we met Kelly. And that's when we first tasted Groennfell and Havoc meads. And, I was like, what are these going to be? Ricky's kind of impulsive. We met him in person. We tasted his stuff. And it's like, are these going to be, he was a fun home brewer. Are these going to be like, good, delicious commercial meads? And we were blown away.
Yeah.
We'd never had these craft meads, fairly low in gravity, sessionable, carbonated in these wonderful cans. And it was just like a paradigm shift for me, that mead could be like that. And that now years later,
that's the steadying. I was going to say that's the steadying influence of Kelly.
Yeah, I could see that. And now years later, y'all are sponsors of the radio show. So it's all it's all coming around in a circle. So that's the history of where we are today. And
so you were supposed to have some of our mead there. But UPS did not succeed.
Well, hopefully
I assume they will eventually.
Hopefully, there's not a thirsty driver on the side of the road quenching said thirst.
But I believe you have some of your own meads, and over here I actually dug out a bottle from, I don't know if he's watching, but Rob Frizzell is a local award-winning mead maker, and before he moved across the country, he left us a whole bunch of gifts of his home brews, and we've been slowly going through them. And I also found something that I was pretty certain did not exist. I have a 2017 bottle of our winter warmer, the first time we ever made and packaged it.
Oh, wow.
I don't know if I'm allowed to drink it on air because we're lightly staffed today and everyone else is going to want to try it. I haven't seen one of those.
I thought you were afraid of driving the forklift or something.
Our forklift is not operable as of yesterday. We had to unload. Yeah, we had to unload a bunch of 50-gallon drums. And by the grace of quickly turn the key, pull the thing up, everyone stand back. We were able to unload the two, and then it went to sleep and will not charge. So no risk there. But anyway, so I have a homebrew. I have a cool new product that Sean, actually, he is our sales guy. In his first week working for us, pitched this idea to me, which is super bold. To just stroll into a place, be like, and he was super respectful. He's like, I have this idea. There are a lot of people out there who have never had mead. Mm-hmm. And there are a lot of people out there who have had mead. And that's also a problem because I can tell you my first homebrewed mead, if that was the one and only mead that my friends had ever had. Ooh, there we go. Our first question was the first mead you drank. Okay, so the first mead I drank was the first mead I made. And luckily, I tried again. It tasted like the water that forms on the top of a sourdough ferment. Oh. It was not good. I had put in no nutrient and insufficient yeast. So went down that path pretty early on. And then second batch had that briny flavor that it took us about 8 years of research to figure out what we think is causing it. But yeah, it was undrinkable. And one of the problems that we talk about with our sales team is if someone has a bad beer, they assume that person who made it is a bad brewer. If they have a bad mead, they assume mead is bad.
Okay.
Because
that's a very good point. I think that's true. I ran into that a lot when I owned the store and would try to talk to folks about mead. A lot of folks around here keep bees, so there's a lot of people that would come in and say, well, I think I want to try to make mead, but I bought a bottle of this stuff. I won't name it, but it's kind of sold everywhere, and I didn't like it. They would tell me. And I would say, well, mead doesn't necessarily taste like that. But you're right. But the assumption was that mead wasn't good. That's a very good observation. I never really thought about it like that before.
Yeah, I think that the first mead that I tasted was either mine or yours because we started brewing at about the same time in 96?
95 or 96?
Yeah. And there was a mead kit at the homebrew store. And we made. Luckily, our first batches of mead were successful. I'll get my elbow.
They were. I think yours was better than mine. I kind of remember this. I remember that I left mine no nutrient, and the packet of yeast was a little packet of dry yeast that just said yeast. I mean,
Yep.
Who knows? And but I left it in the carboy for at least 9 or 10 months to a year before I bottled it. So, but I remember drinking it and thinking, this is not. Well, I don't know. It's like you get into the hobby and you think, oh, this is alcoholic. It wasn't great, but it was good enough that I kept going.
Right, and that's what I tried to tell people. So I worked at a homebrew store for years as well, and I say, hopefully your first beer, you put a lot of attention into it, and you're like, wow, I did it. This tastes like beer. Because after that, you're going to have a bunch of swings and misses. Yeah. But if you have just like one or two under your belt, and I mean, the biggest thing that it's changed over the last 10 years since I've been writing and recording, but this idea that mead needs lay it down for 5 years and trying to figure out, first of all, hunt down where that came from. Right. And I think I finally figured out it's as simple as the fact that most of the mead was made without nutrients.
Yeah.
Despite the fact that in Ethiopia and in Finland and in South Africa, they're drinking mead 6, 7, 8 days old. That's perfectly normal for beer as well. It's just that a lot of the mead makers out there, especially the home mead makers, came out of the wine world and had wine thoughts in their heads, whereas I was lucky enough to come out of the beer world. It was like, there is no reason that we can't apply all the last 700 years of technological advances to this. Temperature control, for one thing.
Right.
Little
Absolutely.
things like that.
Right.
It's such a difference. I have a batch going right now. Our sours go at 94 degrees.
Oh, wow.
And
Okay.
Yeah. A lot of sour yeasts like to be at that temperature, 94 to 98. And once you get to 98, you're likely to clock over to 104 and kill that yeast. So if you have a fully outfitted brew house where you have a glycol chiller, or if you're as small as a home brewer and have a dedicated fridge where you can control it, it's great. But, just 40 years ago, you couldn't have made a mead like that without it, putrefying.
Yeah, I think both of our first meads were carbonated as well.
They were
primed in the bottle, and they were very, very champagne-y, very dry. And we made batches of mead for some friends' wedding, and I remember sitting on their patio drinking mead with you and thinking, do I want to make beer again? Because this is so good. It was so light and, like I say, fruity and champagne-y, and we were very lucky to have got some good honey, and I don't even know where the honey came from or what it was.
Probably Walmart. Who knows?
Or anything.
Yeah, and that's the other thing is if you just took a bottle of Welch's and made wine out of it, you probably wouldn't end up with an extraordinary award-winning wine. And people go and they buy the clarified honey from the grocery store, and that's the first one they use. I was a Costco honey user for many, many years until I started buying it.
And some people add a bunch of sugar, to their. I want this to be powerful. Will this get me drunk?
Oh, that was our favorite thing. When I worked at the homebrew shop, they would say, how do I get more alcohol in this beer?
Yeah.
And our answer was put a shot of vodka in it.
Well, there you go.
Right? If that's your goal, you're probably in the wrong hobby. And I mean, we've all done it, gone on that IPA train where you try to see if you could do like an 11.8% triple IPA. It's part of the sport. But
oh yeah, you got to do it. In fact, a couple of years ago, I did that, and I did it because I just wanted to see if I could. And so I ended up with, I made a 16% apple mead or apple. Well, it's a wine or a mead. It was mostly dextrose. I mean, I put like 8 pounds of dextrose in this 5-gallon batch with some honey, and I made it correctly. It was, the fermentation was good. It was a clean fermentation. I still have maybe 5 or 6 bottles left. It's strong. It's so strong I can't get through very much.
We made a 19.2%, and we sold it one time. And then I was like, first of all, I'm gonna have blood on my hands. It tastes strong, but it doesn't taste like half of a. I mean, that's Jack Daniel's just watered in half, right?
Right.
Like, that's a lot. And even I made the mistake. I had a keg of one of our products after a festival we did. I just brought it to the house because it was a pump tap, so you had to go through it or else it spoiled. And I should have just sent it to a local distillery because I was totally as bad as your average 45-year-old dad at a Ren fair. Like, I had 3 glasses of it. I was like, what the hell was I thinking? I do this for a living. I just sat down and read. I like put the kids down for their nap and I read Dune and drank water for the next 2 hours. It's so dumb.
Right.
Which is why. Ooh. I'm going to throw this one over to you guys.
The question is, which recipe is your favorite to suggest to new brewers? And I would say, I'll go first.
Okay.
Maybe something like what I've got right here. It's a segue into this mead, which is just honey and water and nutrient and yeast. Mm-hmm. And so do you want me to go over the recipe?
Yeah, we also have all of our recipes are free.
Oh, that's website. Right. Yeah, go to Groennfell.com.
Oh, nice.
Yes, we're an open source, and Valkyrie's Choice is the one that I was going to say, which is honey and water and nutrient and yeast.
Yeah. Now this is made with local honey from Caleb the Beekeeper, which we did a feature on the video podcast. We shot some video of him and did an audio interview with him as well. This is 2 pounds, 10 ounces, or 1.19 kilograms of local honey. And it came out to be 2 gallons or 3.7 liters of water with 5 grams of this proper nutrient from Omega that we got for free at HomebrewCon. And used a packet of US-05, Safale US-05, original gravity 1070, final gravity 0.998. And I was in a little bit of a hurry to bottle, so I didn't rack to a secondary. I kind of wish I did because it's a little powdery on the bottom. But I did. I did prime.
Cloudy, but not. Yeah.
I did prime in the bottle, so I thought at the time, I'm going to prime it in the bottle, so there's going to be sediment anyway. Right. But it's a little powdery, as opposed to yeast sediment, which is, more of a solid. It's more flocculent.
Yeah.
Now this is, I halved the batch. Half of it is just plain. Half of it I put flavored with some tinctures, which I'm not going to say because when we do the video show eventually, I want Steve to guess. So this was bottled on the 30th of July. Now it's August 5th. So I don't know if we'll have any carbonation yet or not. And Steve is unfortunately not able to sample today.
I'm flying dry.
Because he's on antibiotics. It was that wild weekend in Newton County.
That's right.
So you can smell it, but it's not fizzy.
No,
it's not even.
Anything.
If the yeast is not even waking up yet.
So you're 1070 down to 998. It's
9.5%. 9.5%.
I was going to say, that's a lot for yeast, especially US-05 hanging out in a bottle.
Looks pretty.
So
gorgeous.
Showing the camera. It's a little cloudy.
I'm going to get in trouble from Sam and Jess. I forgot.
Now you guys are killing me here.
You got to smell that.
It smells really good.
Found my daughter's water cup from lunch.
That apple juice would be great.
Cheers, everybody. Happy Mead Day tomorrow, by the way.
Yeah, no
kidding. It's Mead Day Eve. And then it's Mead Boxing Day.
Yeah.
And then
And the Mead New Year will start next Saturday.
Actually, Winter Warmer, which is sitting right here, I'm still tempted to open.
So, Steve, while we're sampling,
it's a wassail.
What recipe would you suggest for new?
Well, I mean, the basic ingredients are the same ones that you guys would go for, and the only thing that I might suggest, only to make it a little easier for you as someone on your first batch, would be to maybe make a small, what we as homebrewers would call a small batch. Maybe make a 3-gallon batch, so you don't have a big investment. And I would suggest shooting for about an 8 to 10% mead. Don't go into it with the idea that you're going to make, this giant alcohol bomb. The fermentation is much harder to get right, in my opinion. It takes a lot longer,
especially without that temperature control.
Absolutely.
You're so likely to get fusels.
Yeah. And I wouldn't worry about. I wouldn't not make it in the middle of the summer in Arkansas. But if you decided to make it in the late fall, it might be easier to get a good fermentation. And then I also might suggest using a beer yeast. I know that, I use wine yeast a lot, but I really find that I really enjoy where the beer yeast stops. And it leaves me with that nice. So my only point is that I think if it's your first batch, you're not quite sure what you're after. But, if it's my first batch, I want to taste honey. I want it to still taste like the ingredient that I put into it. So if I dry it out to the point that I kind of lose that real fruitiness, that real honey note of it, maybe I don't want to use 71B wine yeast in there. Maybe I want to use USO5 or Capri, which is what I'm using.
Oh yeah,
in the batch I've got going. So I actually have a 3-gallon batch of local honey wine. 3-gallon batch with, I think, I can't remember exactly, but the mead is designed to be a 9% mead, and I used Capri, which is the new blend from Imperial.
Hybrid.
Got it. As I say, I don't know this one.
Well, it's a hybrid farmhouse mead. It blends an English ale yeast, which they call juice, and
Kveik.
and Kveik,
the Loki.
Loki, yeah, Kveik yeast, and so they've blended it proprietary. It's not just pouring 2 patches in, but at any rate,
they put on the Barry White music, and
that's right.
The
romantically leaked.
I did learn that yeast theoretically can sexually reproduce. Most of its asexual budding.
Yeah, they like flowers, though.
There's a recent episode of Basic Brewing Radio, shameless plug, where Dr. Matt from Imperial, Matt Winans, told us about how they actually kind of stress out the yeast.
Yeah.
Such that they go into this sexual reproduction as opposed to just
It's exactly like freshman year at a small liberal arts college.
You stress them out. And you put them together.
Yeah.
Well, I want to say that I want to brag on this mead. I can't wait for you to taste it, but it's
just being cruel.
Even though Steve, it's really good.
Well, my pharmacist put the fear of God in me because he said, "Don't even take mouthwash."
Yeah.
I'm like, well, okay, I guess what you're telling me is the truth.
Yeah.
I want to finish my little answer, and then I'll let you talk. Okay. I want to finish my little answer on the first mead to make. I would also answer it in this direction of what's the first mead not to make.
Oh.
Which would I wouldn't try to make a fruit, a melomel the first time out, unless you have some really good guidance from someone who's done it for a while.
Yeah.
And because once you introduce fruit, you've got so many more variables. It changes the complete. I just wouldn't do that your first time. There, I'm done. Okay.
So this mead.
I was going to throw in another thing. The really strong mead, really light meads are also like super low ABV ones. That's one of the things we'll talk about today. Is I have something now at 4%. I would not brew something that light for the first 5-6 years as a pro mead maker.
Yeah.
There's nothing to hide behind.
Right.
That's why as homebrewers, the hardest thing we could try to brew is Bud Light. It's almost impossible to replicate a Bud Light. And the same thing is, you get your nutrient load ever so slightly off, and you can taste the particulate,
the uric acid or whatever.
Yeah.
Okay. While there's this pocket of time, even though it finished out at 0.998, it has a nice substantial mouthfeel. It's not astringent. It's not watery at all. It's sorry, Steve, but you'll have some. But it reminds me very much of those first batches of mead that we made. It's very simple. It's lovely honey flavor. It's a little bit fruity, and it's wonderful. So good job, me. And I hope that the yeast wakes up and gets enough energy to carbonate the batches. If not, it's okay. It's all right like it is.
And that's the nice thing about mead. It's also forgiving in a way where people don't have the same expectations, which can help or hurt you. But, you give that to one of your friends and they're not like, this beer is flat. They'll be like, oh. And that's another thing about getting that first batch is honey has a whole bunch of aldehydes in it and esters that are produced with normal fermentations. You could do things to clean them up, but it has a flavor potentiator that is a specific flavor potentiator like vanilla has, making things taste sweeter than they actually are. So when you make a very strong mead that's very sweet, it doubles down on the sweetness and it's so cloying.
Yes.
Whereas, you're below, we actually, our products finish out at like 994. And we had to reprogram our canning line because it weighs all the cans as they go through, and ethanol is lighter than water. So it was like, this can must be low. It weighs less than a can of water. And it was shooting them off both sides of the machine. We had buckets catching them. But at 994, I've got these new spritzers that Sean came up with that just came out like literally this week. And even though they're 994 and 4.2% alcohol, they still have perceived sweetness to them, which is just a wild thing about working with honey.
I want to talk a bit about the beer that I brewed this past week. Of course, I brewed it on my Warthog electric brewing system from our friends and sponsors Desiree and Dave of HighGravityBrew.com. Coming up soon is Susan's and my 30th wedding anniversary, so I wanted to brew something fairly light and drinkable. I landed on my cream ale recipe, which is a favorite of mine, but I hadn't brewed it in a long time. There is a twist in the recipe, which you'll hear about a little later in the show. I used 10 pounds, or 4.5 kilograms, Pilsen malt, a pound, or 450 grams, flaked maize, an ounce, or 28 grams, of Hallertau Tradition at the start of the 1 hour long boil, and another ounce 5 minutes before the end. So simple hopping, simple grain bill. I set the Warthog EBC 130 controller to mash mode at 150 degrees Fahrenheit, or 65 C, and I stirred every few minutes. My system has a pump, a recirculating pump, that I do use for higher gravity brews in 10-gallon batches, but, just on moderate gravity 5-gallon batches, I just stir every now and then. I checked my gravity with a refractometer toward the end of the mash to make sure that it's, stopped climbing because I'm greedy. I collected my wort and was able to hold a very vigorous boil, because it was hot outside, at only 75% power from that 240-volt Blickman boil coil. I love my Warthog system. It certainly takes the pain out of propane. And whether you're a single-vessel brewer like Steve and me, or if you prefer 2 or 3-vessel setups, HighGravityBrew.com has the rig for you. And if you use the code EBC75BB, you can save $75 off your Warthog electric brewing purchase. That's at family-owned and operated HighGravityBrew.com. That's HighGravityBrew.com. We have a question from a Facebook user. What is something you want to see from the mead community, home scene? What do you want? What do you want to see? Well, Steve, let's throw this to Steve. Steve hadn't talked in a while. What do you want? What would you like to see from either professional or home mead makers?
A glass in my hand would be good. But more seriously, I don't know. One thing that I look for. So if I go to a liquor store, and I always look to see if they sell mead, and I always look to see if they do. What are you selling? And I find that I enjoy those kind of 9 to kind of like my first answer. Those 9 to 10 to 12% meads that don't knock you down, that aren't too cloying, that aren't too sweet.
Wine-like.
Wine-like, but without that. Wine-like, but I don't know, softer and rounder maybe. I don't know how to answer that.
I can identify.
Yeah, me too. But there's a meadery in Pratt, Kansas, and now I can't think of their name exactly, so I'm not going to say it.
There's also a meadery in Central Arkansas that I haven't tried their wares yet, but it's exciting.
This one, I love the mead they're making, and they do an elderberry mead, and they do it in three. They do it as a sweet, a semi-sweet, semi-dry, and dry that they call it. And I think, and I really love that. It's basically the same flavor profile, but the amount of residual sugar and I'll call it jamminess, for lack of a better word, changes at every strength. And I really,
that's interesting.
I really like that approach. So I kind of like the idea of playing with the same palette, but seeing how it's different from a session. I'll call it a session mead, 7-8% version of the same mead at 13%. That's interesting to me, and maybe not as so much as a drinker. It's interesting to me as a brewer or as a mazer. Yeah.
Now, some of the for me, I'm thinking back on some of the shows we did years ago with Tim Lieber, who, Tim, if you're listening, you said you were going to send me some meads and we were going to talk. So just a little passive aggressiveness toward Tim Lieber. But if you remember, Tim sent us selections of mead made from different honeys.
Yeah.
And we were supposed to guess, which honeys went with which meads. But that was a real eye-opener because the difference in flavors between the different varietals of honey was just amazing. Same recipe, same ingredients as in honey, water, nutrient, yeast. Yeah. But each of those had wonderful characteristics that really accentuated. I've had some mead this morning on an empty stomach, but they accentuated the terroir, as you were, of the different honeys. I'm going to start talking less now.
I was going to say a lot of homebrewers love to do, and that's a weird segue. What I was going to say, even before, what's your favorite varietal of honey that you have tasted?
Yeah, Facebook users said, what's your favorite varietal honey? You're going to have to start talking all the talking, Steve.
You had like a third of a glass. I know,
but I haven't eaten anything today.
You should have had a breakfast
Me neither.
Yeah.
I haven't had food since 6 p.m. yesterday. Anyway,
diving in. It's Friday.
Well, what I was thinking about was a lot of home brewers, I think you should play around with those varietals. If you have an interest in going pro, pick one honey and see what you can do with it. Back to what Steve was saying. Pick that Costco honey and trick it out. Learn about yeast, learn about water, learn about nutrients. But pick a wildflower honey and just go to town. Raw makes a difference. I wouldn't say it if it didn't matter. There are things in raw honey that act as natural yeast nutrients and can make a much healthier fermentation. But of the favorite varietals, and I should also answer the question, what do I want to see from the mead community, pro and home, is the homebrew community is super mutually supportive. If you've got a problem, no one rags on you. No one tries to bring you down. It's amazing. And in the pro mead making community, I have always experienced the same thing. There might be the one person out there that's feeling super competitive that day, might say something snarky, but it's been 10 years in the industry, and I can still call a dozen other professional mead makers and say, I'm having a problem with this. What would you do? And
good answer.
I'm up in Vermont where the beer community is still like that. And there was a study done. This sounds like a tangent, but I'll bring it right back, that there are two commercial enterprises that do not function like they should, according to economists, and it is food trucks and small breweries. because we should see each other as competition, but we don't. You go to a place with 12 food trucks. It was actually run in Austin. It's Austin, Texas. There are 12 food trucks at this location, 18 food trucks at this other. And rather than seeing each other as competition, if your oven goes down, someone will spot you an oven in their truck. And a lot of these guys and gals, they will hop trucks. On their one day off, your short labor, there'll be a cutter for you. There'll be a sous for you. These tiny little spaces. It's hot. It's exhausting. I got to tell you, we're not as brutal as a beer brewery. I'll admit it. Like I don't shovel grain anymore, and it's the greatest blessing in my life. But if Stowe Cider, right down the road from here, we have the same kind of can ends. You probably never noticed, but it says what states you have to pay a deposit on your can end. Yeah. And it is legally controlled, and meads and ciders don't have the same deposits as beers. So I can't run to a local brewery and get the can ends to close my cans. And I had to get 6,000 gallons out in 2 weeks, and our order was delayed by a week. So I called them, and at cost, they sold me their can ends, and we loaded up the trunk of my CFO's car. She was driving past. We'll go with that's why. But that level of mutual support, as the beer market is for craft is currently shrinking, which is weird, but hopefully that won't last. I'm still seeing that level of mutual support that I hope exists in our industry forever. And the theory is because we hang out.
Yeah.
All these food truck people, you could, if you work at a Burger King and never go to a McDonald's, you could see McDonald's as an enemy. But if you're a food truck vendor, you see each other all the time. You have shared stories. You know what hell it is to be at a galley kitchen that small. And all these beer brewers are struggling with the same things. And as long as we keep talking, that is what I want to see from the mead making and professional brewing community going forward. It's going to be tough as competition feels like it will win, but I think we can keep it up.
Is that the spritzer?
It's the spritzer.
Oh, I'm so excited and jealous.
Oh, yes, yours is probably coming later today.
Well, usually the delivery people come before noon, and I was hoping that they would be coming up on the front porch here. But the fact that they haven't come yet means that it'll probably come maybe tomorrow, maybe Monday. But supply chain or something, I don't know.
Something like that. So answer to the varietal question, blueberry honey and coffee honey are without a doubt my two favorite honeys I've ever had. Coffee honey is like $22 a pound, and that's lovely. I'm sure that there is a mead maker out there that could make a world-class one-of-kind beverage out of it. I'm not good enough to work with honey that's that expensive. I'm proud of my work, but man's got to know his limits, and that is clearly mine.
That's a small batch. Yeah. Now, I was trying to think back on those. I need to go back and listen to those episodes with Tim. But I remember the mesquite honey standing out as an aggressively flavored honey that I'm not sure that I liked, but it was just like, oh, wow, yep, that's mesquite. And I'm not a fan of mesquite wood as a smoking material because it's just so sharp, and I'm used to the sweetness of the hickory or the apple. But the fruited one, the fruit honeys were my favorite. But there was a wildflower. There were a couple of different wildflower honeys of the same. It was like the same flower in different regions or something. That one was remarkably different from the other. It's just you need to go in the archives on basicbrewingradio.com and find those episodes and sample vicariously with us. But honey does make a difference, and you need to make sure that your honey is real and not reconstituted, sugar added crap, frankly, from somewhere, and just make sure that it's. If you can get local honey, if you know a beekeeper, and you can get honey that's local to your area, like this is, it can be wonderful. But yeah, and good honey is sometimes worth some extra money.
Well, it's like computers, garbage in, garbage out. But I would say, as far as varietal, I don't know. I haven't tasted everything that I'd like to. So I've never had. Well, I have had acacia honey. I remember I did make a mead with an acacia honey one time, and it was really good. But I would say, just as advice, I completely agree with finding a local source of honey that came right out of the hive, and you kind of know its complete custody chain, you might say. And so it's fresh. So to me, the variety of honey isn't so important at my level as it is that I know the honey has been made locally. Or, do you make honey? Do bees make honey? I don't know what the right word is.
Bees make honey.
Bees
apiaries collect it.
Yeah, that's right. So that would be preferable than worrying about whether it's orange blossom honey or lavender honey. I'd rather have a good local source of wildflower honey or clover honey that I know is raw and healthy, I guess. I don't know how to say it.
It seems like there was an agave nectar in there, some agave honey in there as well that was really, really good.
Yeah. One of the nice things about being a home mead maker or home mazer is that you can afford $22 a pound honey sometimes. And, if you just, it's a hobby. And, hobbies aren't meant to be cost efficient, by nature. I like to fly fish. It's a really expensive way to catch a fish. But I love it. And same thing with making mead and beer for that. Well, actually, beer's cheaper.
Yeah, and this local honey was not cheap. Right. And Steve and I compared, when I heard from Caleb, what the cost of his honey was, I texted Steve and said, "Is this right?" And he said, and then you told me, some pricing you got on some other, but I was only buying a small amount.
Right.
And Caleb is a good guy, and he's a young guy who's a go-getter who, cuts hives out of people's houses, and he's a hard worker.
Oh, yeah.
And I'm like, I'll support that, and especially because it's delicious, and it's literally just down the road from my house. So I'm not a professional mead maker. I don't have to I don't have to buy hundreds or thousands or whatever pounds of honey that you buy every year. So I can be extravagant and
we actually
make a 12-pack.
We use more honey than the entire state of Vermont produces in a year. When people ask, why don't you buy locally? I'm like, because people wouldn't sell it to me, and even if they did, they would then run out. But for our special ones, for our sours,
you're like the Walmart of honey.
If you send a drone up off our roof, though, you can see where the honey for our sours comes from, because that's where I want the wild yeast with our local fruit. So we switched to working with all small farmers for our fruit supply.
Do you keep honeys there at the meadery?
At hives, we do not. We've talked about it. We can't keep them at this location. We don't think, but the town has been pretty permissive with us because we're a B Corp. So we have an international standard we're held to for social and environmental equity. So we may be able to convince them, because they are not holding us to the standard lawn mowing for the rest of the business park, because we're like, look, wildflower conservation, blah, 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 our mission, and then goats. Who's against goats doing the lawn mowing? But
they're the greatest of all time.
It's the cutest. Good one. I would not have gotten that joke 3.5 weeks ago. Someone told me what that was.
Goat sounds like a bad thing if someone tells you.
You're the goat.
Chris says, I'm racking my brain on doing a coffee mel and cannot think of a fruit that hasn't been done with it. Do you guys have any ideas of a combo you would find interesting? Maybe we should define what a coffee mel is.
Coffea mel is any mead that has coffee at any point in the fermentation. So some people, I actually often used to do my primary fermentation on the coffee. So there's a thing known as yeast stripping, where your yeast will take flavors out, which is why things are often like flowers or subtle spices or like strawberry. It's usually added in the secondary. But coffee has so many harsh elements, it's not a bad idea to have a little bit of scrubbing happen on it. But in this batch I'm doing right now, coffee went in secondary, because that's when I thought to do it. Also, shout out to our friends at Run Amok Maple right up the hill here in Fairfax. They're available everywhere. They ship to the entire U.S. and possibly the world, and they make some of the best maple syrup on earth. This isn't me as a friend of theirs saying it. Literally top-rated maple syrup on earth, but they do cool infusions. So they have like lavender syrup and coffee syrups and cinnamon and vanilla ones. And for the low cost of, please get this out of our walk-in, we're able to do collaborations with them with maple infused ingredients from them. So this Café ML that I've been talking about is going to be with them. So a fruit that goes with it that hasn't been done. That's, I don't know I assume everything's been done, but I've hardly ever had a Café ML with a fruit. The only one I've ever made was a coffee chocolate cherry.
That seems like a good pair.
It makes sense.
Yeah, but I can't think of, I mean, you could go really off the wall. I would suggest doing coffee and a really, really fruity pepper. That's the first thing I thought of that I don't know that I've certainly never had. Something like, we can't go down the like Ricky's nerdy pepper path. I have like 14 different ones going with it. And Steve, you're a pepper guy too, right?
Well, yeah, I was. I'd never thought about this before. I've never had a coffee mead before ever in my life.
Oh, okay.
So I need to. But I would think a chili like a guajillo or an ancho, something kind of smoky, little cigarish would work.
Yeah, I did an ancho mead many years ago. It's my favorite. It tastes like raisins and so good. Yeah, that's the direction I would go. Or if you want to pick something like one of the Italian peppers young, like a Calabrian or a lively Italian, while it's still got that green fruity flavor before it starts to really pick up its heat.
Yeah.
But yeah, if you want to go like a dried one, like ancho guajillo, those I've used both of those in brewing before.
Ricky's,
I think they were actually in Fire Drake.
Ricky's nerdy pepper path was my favorite section of Candyland.
Those little spice candies that got so popular in the 90s and aughts. Just a dude in a flannel shirt with big hair being like, go back, it's not going to be popular for 2 more years. Good.
I owe you some more details about my non-traditional anniversary cream ale that I talked about earlier. I wanted to brew with A44 Kviking from our friends and sponsors at Imperial Organic Yeast because that's just a summer tradition around here. It's a typical summertime thing to do. However, this time I wanted to experiment with temperature. I've always fermented hot with Kvike and Kviking in particular. However, I wanted to see what Kviking would do with this cream ale at basement temperature. My basement right now is at 72 degrees Fahrenheit. I think that's around 22 C. So I chilled my wort pretty close to that and set it down in the basement. Well, the airlock was bubbling before bedtime, but it wasn't going crazy a couple hours after pitching like what happens when I pitch Kvike and Kviking at 100 degrees Fahrenheit or around 37 C. Still, it was very active the next morning, and it was finished with primary fermentation in about 4 days instead of 1 or 2 with the higher temperature. So it acted more like a regular standard yeast strain. I'm going to keg it tomorrow, and I hope it will be ready to go before the big day. Stay tuned for more details on that. We love Imperial Organic Yeast with 200 billion cells in each easy-to-open package. My stir plate is dusty because I don't use it anymore to make starters for moderate gravity 5-gallon batches. Don't forget to ask your local homebrew store about Imperial Organic Yeast, I-22 Capri, the new hybrid from Imperial, and check them out at imperialyeast.com. That's imperialyeast.com. Facebook user says, is there a type of ingredient that you love or hate working with?
Ooh, it's so different between being I'm still a home brewer. So like I have really different answers depending. So we actually switched on this one. I'll tell you the one that we actually quit using because it was such a bear to work with. And it was oak chips. getting oak chips
Yeah.
back out of a 2,000-gallon conical fermenter that has just had mead in it, which means it's now full of CO2. I was the only person on the staff that was able to go in after them because I could hold my breath for 2 minutes. And also my wife and I own the place, so I can't sue me.
Don't do this at home or in a professional environment.
No.
Please
so anyway,
review
we totally,
your
OSHA certification. Yes, we are a full. Actually, I'm the only person that has enclosed access certification in the company for this reason. But we don't do that anymore. It's just such a beer. But as like a home brewer, oh my God, oak chips all the way. Like just put them in a little bag, drop them in the bottom of that bucket. It's, oh my God, it's the easiest. So that's the first one that comes to mind that we just quit using it. So if you are a home brewer or really thinking about scaling up, there's an amazing company out there. It's a father-daughter team, I believe. It's called something like Swan Barrels. Ricky at Groennfell.com if you really do want the actual answer to it. I think I even wrote an article about them. But they make these staves where they cut a honeycomb pattern in them so that you have maximum surface area. So it means that you can use woods that you couldn't actually make a barrel out of. You need a special type of wood that doesn't have pineal holes or twisted fibers, which would allow the liquid through. So you can use things like birch and beech and ash, some of which you can make barrels out of, but you can get these flavors in your mead and they make homebrew sizes. So if you wanted to play around, so that's what we use now. And you zip tie them together, so you could reach in and pull wood out, and you pull this long chain of wood out of the tank. So that's what we do instead of oak chips now. But that's the one that I just couldn't stand working with. And the reason I'm a mead maker is I like working with honey, and I detest shoveling grain.
Oh.
Yeah.
Because when it's done, you have an empty bucket or an empty drum or an empty tote, and you rinse it, and you are done. As an avid gardener, I do miss the grain for compost, but still not worth the shoveling. Grain is the one thing I'm glad I'm not allowed to and don't have to work with. So sending it over to the home brewers who work on a different scale.
Well, I think, and I think working with honey is fun, and that's one of the reasons I like mead, because honey is such a fascinating thing to me. You know, how the bees make it, how it's collected, how it tastes. It's a wonderful thing. And so I like working with honey.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And you've most definitely worked with more ingredients than I have as far as flavoring, especially on the mead side. You're like, kitchen cabinet guy. Hey, well, you know what else would be good? Because you have a professional culinary background, and you're like, hey, you know what would pair well with this, this, and this, and this, and this, and like your Turkish delight mead, which had all kinds of different things, including maybe was that the one that had a rose water?
Yeah, I think. Well, yeah, I think so. And on that particular mead, I was remembering my time when I lived in Turkey for a while, and I was thinking of those flavors. And
you were serving in the army. Thank you.
That's true.
Seriously, thank you for your service.
You're welcome. At any rate, I was remembering the flavors of the food and thinking, how can I bring that into mead? And then that made me think about a direct answer to this question is I like working with saffron.
Oh, yeah.
I really love to work with saffron. It's a hard ingredient to work with because it's so powerful. If you don't, it's hard to control. I'll put it that way. Mm-hmm. But if you get it right, it's wonderful. If you get it wrong,
I made a saffron mead. It was the mead that I pulled out at a party in 2012. And it was when Kelly said, okay, we can do this professionally.
Oh, yeah.
It was the mead that she's like, you did it. Letting me work with such an expensive ingredient. Again, just home brewing at the time, finishing up my master's degree. But it was the mead that we pulled out. And my friends and Kelly said, all right, you two, we go do it. Go move back to
That's
Vermont
awesome.
and start a
That's a great
meadery.
story.
Yeah, that's amazing. Oh, no, a Turkish delight mead. That's fascinating. Do you have any of it left?
No, it was long gone, but I want to make it again, and it was very popular. I gave a lot of it away to friends and family that I was impressed with myself, and it came out well. But it was basically an apricot mead, an apricot melomel, and then flavored with saffron and rose water.
Yes. You're definitely going to need that recipe.
It was
my
really
dad,
good.
yeah. My dad and I
you were asking about, Ricky, you were asking about a possible collaboration. Maybe that's the collaboration.
Could be the one.
Yeah. Yeah. It was great.
My dad and I are both big fans of British literature, and my dad finally had Turkish Delight, which appears in all his favorite books when he went to England, and he's like, "This is terrible." Totally, it shattered his childhood dreams. Like, why does Edmund in Lion the Witch of the Wardrobe go crazy for this stuff? It just
Turkish Delight is usually a candy, right? Or
Yeah,
is it,
yes.
But I think you named it in homage of the ingredients.
It was actually Sultan's Delight.
Oh, okay.
And,
all right, my mistake.
And Sultan's Delight is also the name of a. Actually, it's an eggplant dish. Eggplants are very popular in the Middle East, and so the name didn't quite work. But the name was funny and good, and and all that. But
you're right. I'm remembering now.
Yeah, I was going to say that only the rosewater really tracks through to the Turkish Delight itself. But all of a sudden, I love this whole thing.
The Sultan's Delight. Change your channel to Sultan's Delight.
And the other thing is that Middle East, like baklava and all the very similar desserts, they're really sweetened with a honey syrup. It's drenched in honey, so it makes sense that making a mead with that flavor profile, you wouldn't. I can't imagine a pistachio mead right now, but pistachios and honey and rose water and orange water and saffron. Those flavors all are beautiful together, and if you can nail them inside of a mead, wow. We were going
to do a hazelnut coffee mead, and we just realized we have really, really good cleaning and sanitizing protocols. Obviously, we're a commercial facility. I don't want to be that guy that has to put on his can of mead, this mead produced in a facility that processes nuts. Yeah. So there's the one reason. So as soon as you said pistachio mead, I was like, I had something like that. So James, is there anything other than everything that you like or dislike?
Here's an off the wall. I'm going to say vodka is something that I've been enjoying lately in making
glasses. Yeah,
in making tinctures for our tincture sampler series and this upcoming mead thing. But using vodka or a neutral spirit to make tinctures, and I usually take like half a cup of vodka and then put a fistful of whatever I'm extracting the flavor from, and that way you can dose post fermentation flavors into, even at serving time. Theoretically, you could have a party, you could have a bar set with little cups of tinctures with the little pipe, flexible plastic pipette, and people could make their own little, beer or mead cocktails sort of out of the thing. And I think that is a wonderful opportunity to control very precisely your flavorings, especially post-fermentation. And if there's an ingredient that's like messy to work with in the fermenter, and you're worrying about trying to get it out of after after fermentation or during packaging or whatever, make a tincture and then dose that on a small scale in a glass, and then scale that up and then put it into your mead or your beer. So I'm going to say a favorite ingredient that I've been working with lately, I'm going to say vodka.
That's a great idea.
Yeah.
Well, thanks again to Steve and Ricky. That, like I said, that's just a taste of what we talked about. We had a lot of fun, and I maybe had a little more fun than I was supposed to as we kept rolling, because I was, sampling delicious mead on an empty stomach. I'm a lightweight nowadays. Check out the full video on Groennfell's YouTube and Facebook channels. And Steve and I have more mead videos on the way, so stay tuned. In the meantime, if you have brewing questions, show suggestions, or just want to say howdy, write to james@basicbrewing.com, or just fill out the contact form on basicbrewing.com. And please don't forget to tell us where you're from. Check out our mobile-friendly shop at basicbrewingshop.com. Thanks to everybody supporting us through our Patreon page. Special goodies coming your way. Check that out at patreon.com/basicbrewing. So until next time, until then, thanks for listening, everybody. I'm James Spencer. Production help for Basic Brewing Radio and our website is provided by Kelly Dotson. Basic Brewing Radio is a production of Active Voicing. We'll talk to you next time, everybody. In the meantime, stay well and stay tuned. So long.